Welcome to the Cowtown Cats Lacrosse Podcast, where we talk all things Panther City Lacrosse Club. Now here are your hosts, Nicholas and Andy.
Panther City came in this weekend taking on the division-leading San Diego Seals, hoping to get a little bit closer in the standings. And, of course, San Diego looking to keep their number one spot in the West. Welcome, everyone. This is the Cowtown Cats Lacrosse Podcast. I am Nicholas, joined by Andy.
Hello, hello.
We had a guess as to how this game would go beforehand. I think we both said one of two things. Either we would keep it close and it would be a hard-fought game, possibly getting a win at the end, or it would be a, for lack of better words, kind of a massacre. We'll go over the game here in a second, but I'll just say this. One of those guesses were true.
Yeah, that is for sure. And I don't know if you can tell based on the tone of our voice, but might not have been the most positive outcome.
But I mean, we came in with high hopes, especially because the game that they had beforehand in San Diego was close. We didn't have Crawford playing then. The team didn't look the way it did, the way it does now, and it seems like the team has obviously done better since their meeting in San Diego.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Again, Crawford didn't play. Phil Caputo was out with an injury, I believe. McLean hadn't come back from his season-long injury at that point, and we only lost by 12-10. Now, Gaucher was probably the bright spot in that game, but there were other things that went well for us. So you thought, oh, well, as long as we don't get an early hole, then hopefully this game will go pretty well.
Right, and that's why we kind of hoped that this would be a pretty close game. And then obviously if we came out with a win, that would close the distance between us and Saskatchewan, or no, not us and Saskatchewan, us and Calgary, and kind of keep us further ahead against Colorado, especially Colorado, because they've been kind of on a surge the last few games. But I mean, that Saturday night we were hoping for some interesting outcomes, and might not have gone our way, but the first quarter started. Of course, I mean, it wouldn't be a Panther City game without going down early. About 2 minutes in, a goal by San Diego, and then just again without too much time going by, another goal by San Diego. They came out really firing on all cylinders against us.
Yeah, they definitely they came across as the more physical and in a lot of ways sharper team too, especially on offense. We all know San Diego's an offensive juggernaut. They've got at least, the announcers, when we watched the replay, they kept saying they had 6 legitimate scoring threats.
Oh yeah.
Which is, pretty crazy considering only 5 guys are on offense at one time. So, yeah, they definitely showed it by going up 2-zip with less than 5 minutes into the game.
Well, all right. And not only that, but when we had the ball on offense, I mean, their defense was honestly, the best way I can describe it is suffocating us. I mean, they wouldn't allow us to get inside. Any shot we tried to take, they were almost just going after the swing itself, it seemed like.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Every shot early on just seemed to be further away than we would have wanted. They did a great job kind of packing the middle and not allowing any cuts through, any penetration. So definitely did not make life easy.
Yeah, and thankfully for us, I mean, early on, our offense was trying to just keep things close. I mean, not too far after they go up 2-0. Donville, again, having a great rookie season, gets in for a goal and at least keeps it close. That for me was, when I was watching it, I was like, man, like this could be, of course, every game, this could be the kind of turning point that keeps us close in this game, because we were only down by 1 goal at that point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's nice to see it happen early, and it did kind of happen. It wasn't by transition player per se, but it happened right after a change of possession on the other side, which is a great element. Whenever you can get those goals early in before the defense is fully recovered, it always helps you get things moving and gets the fans into the game as well.
For sure. And we were hot and right in the middle of it right then, but Unfortunately, San Diego, as I said last week, they kind of are who we thought they were, and they kind of went on a little bit of a run against us in that first quarter. So much so, Panther City did the thing that I was kind of hoping they wouldn't do, and they pulled Damoud pretty early on, and well, not early, but middle of the first, it seemed like.
Yeah, after Donville shot, Austin Stotts hit 2 goals in a row, both within less than 2 minutes of each other, and then Curtis Dixon rounded it out to go up 5-1. Now, historically in the past, usually when Damude, or probably most goalies in the league, when you give up 5 goals to start a game, there is a high likelihood that the coach is going to want to put the backup in, which is exactly what Coach TK did. And honestly, starting out, it looked like a good decision. Cam McLeod started out with a lot of good saves early on, kind of moving around a bit more, getting after the balls.
Oh yeah, and I've noticed that he guards the goal a little differently than Damoud.
Yes.
Isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's well, it depends on what's going on around him, but he just kind of he's a lot quicker, and he kind of plays it out a little bit more. It seems like.
Yeah, whereas Damian likes to use his frame and the pads to kind of pack things in. McLeod will go for a bit more of the athletic saves coming out of the net a little bit.
Yeah, and like you said, it was a good change at first. I mean, they got another goal, I believe, and or did they go? It was at already 5-1. Yeah, it was already 5-1. But of course, we've talked about it before. We can't make it through. Well, we can make it through games without a fight, but unfortunately, this time it was a warranted fight. So something happened. I forget what was happening downfield, but I had actually noticed that a Seals player came up behind one of ours and like almost pretty much tried to knock him out, with a stick high behind him. And then the next thing you know, I see a fight going on that end.
Yeah, so you and we were sitting on opposite ends of the field at that point. And so what was happening in front of us was the loose ball scrum, where it just seemed to kill the entire shot clock. 3 guys from both teams going at it. And then as that was happening, that's when we heard or noticed the commotion from the other side, where the fight between Austin Stotts and Liam Patton started happening. According to the commentators, Stotts took some sort of a cheap shot on Josh Medeiros,
Mm-hmm.
who we'll go and get into later. He was getting pretty banged up throughout the game. But yeah, that's definitely the Caputo and Gillis fight from earlier in the season was pretty intense, but that
Mm-hmm.
happened at the end of a game. This
Right.
happened in the before the first quarter even ended, so it was pretty crazy.
Yeah, and they were going at it. You could tell, Panther City's emotions were kind of getting hot, especially being down 5-1 like that. So, I mean, you hate to see it happen. And honestly, we were all hoping that the San Diego player, who was it again? Was it
Thoughts?
Stotts?
Mhm.
Stotts, yeah. We were hoping that he would almost get ejected because of the cheap shot. It's funny how I feel like they don't review that. I feel like that's something you should review, especially on a penalty like that.
Yeah, I know in all sports people joke like that the refs always catch the second guy, or
Yeah.
the effect of whatever the cause may be. But yeah, it resulted in majors for both Stotts and Patton. Patton did manage to get Stotts' chain off him. That was one thing you saw him handing back to the ref at the end. Not only his chain, but his entire jersey.
Yeah, I mean the whole thing was gone. So, gotten some good shots, but unfortunately they ended the first down 5-1. Second quarter, again, you always hope for a good turnaround. Uh, it's just this game didn't feel like it was ever in our control, and that was even more so in the second quarter. I mean, Malcolm gets a good early goal, puts us up, or not puts us up, but gets us close 5-2. And then McLeod was playing pretty good, but it's just, unfortunately, I don't know. It's like every few steps we made to get even close to them, they would take 5 or 6 more to stay way ahead of us.
Yeah, yeah. After we got that early power play goal in the second quarter, yeah, Berg, and this is might be where maybe Damude's style of guarding the goal might be a bit more effective when you're going one on one in transition, and a guy as good as Westberg just has all the time and space to roam to put the shot out anywhere he likes. He was able to get McLeod with a nice move, and so it's like you hate to see it because that put us down 6-2 with over well, basically the rest of the second quarter to play.
Hmm. Well, and so that that happens. I mean, at that point, I think Hasek, something happened with him. I don't know if he ran into somebody or I can't remember, but he kind of. I think you're the one who noticed, and you said something like he hurt his calf or something and
Mm.
had to go to the bench. Did you see what happened with that?
Yeah, so in the replay, from what it looked like and the way the trainer was working on his leg, it seemed like some sort of leg cramp because I think he came back in later on and
Hmm.
there wasn't any issue. But yeah, at that time it happens.
Well, yeah, and you never know what happens too, so you never know how severe it's going to be. But yeah, it's just like again, their defense just was keeping on us the entire game, and so we had a hard time getting off shots. But again, I mean, San Diego's defense we talked about before. They're built to score, and they're built to score a lot, and that's what they did in the second quarter. They kind of went on a little bit of a run against us towards the middle to the end of the second quarter.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, you look at the the scoring from the second, and it's like, oh, we had 4 goals. That's pretty good. I don't think many teams would be unhappy for that.
Hmm.
Well, we gave up 8, and considering we gave up 5 in the first quarter, yeah, eight was not a good number to for it to balloon to.
Well, and not only that, but like they scored fast too in a couple of them. I mean, it was not good against our defense.
Yeah, 4 of those goals came with less than 4 minutes to play in the quarter. One of them we only had 6 seconds left in the half, but I mean, San Diego definitely was showing why they are the number one team in the West and one of the best teams in the league.
Yeah, and I'll say this with talking about Cam McLeod, like I think it was I don't know I can't remember if it was in the second quarter or the third. There was a play, and it might have been in the third, but there was a play where somebody was coming a San Diego player was coming in to score, and he almost acted like he wanted to go move away from the. That's why I mentioned earlier. He wanted to move away from the goal to kind of like
Hmm.
attack it at point
Yeah.
rather than like get back and try to stop it before it goes in. And that led to the player just being like, okay, well if you're going to play that far out, I'm just going to shoot it over you.
Hmm. Yeah, and he's still young and doesn't get as much playing time as Damien, obviously, but it's growing pains. Unfortunately, you hate to see it result in a goal allowed in a game, but hey, hats off to San Diego. They're a very smart veteran team, especially on offense.
Oh yeah, and they're a threat. I mean, we talked about their offense last week, and we're talking about their offense this week. Man, I cannot talk about enough about their defense. Every time we were on offense, I mean that's what I mean. They were attacking the whoever had the ball. They were getting pressure. That's what I mean. When they were getting ready to shoot, when our players were getting ready to shoot, they weren't trying to just like put their hands up and block or just try to get in the
Hmm.
way. They were like attacking and going after the ball
Yeah.
at the point at the shot at the point where the ball comes out, and that way again we just never got a good shot off.
Yeah, and I know one face-off in particular in the second quarter, it was almost indicative of what would become the entire game. Burton won the face-off, which was like, oh, nice, awesome. Hopefully, you want to win face-offs because then you can get your offense going.
Hmm.
But so he crosses over onto San Diego's side, but by the time we get possession, he's already been like sandwiched into the corner by at least 2 or 3 Seals defenders, and he's just kind of helplessly cradling his ball with one hand, waiting for help to arrive. And by the time they get there, they just have to eat the possession since
Yeah,
they can't get any offense going.
yeah, and the shot clock goes off. That happened a few times this game where people were kind of in the corner or getting pretty much fighting for the ball. And again, we said this last game, like I would hope that our players would be a little bit more forceful and get over there. And I know they're
Right.
trying to set up the offense and they're trying to set up where they're supposed to be position wise if we get the ball. But man, we got to be we gotta be in there. We gotta be fighting for that ball just so we can even have a shot to begin with.
Yeah, yeah, it's a big if you've got just one of your teammates against two or three other guys, and it did seem like I don't know everyone's like height or weight, but San Diego did almost seem like kind of like a bigger team overall. Because I know usually, like I'd say, Tosic and Caputo are probably the bigger guys on Panther City, but yeah, I don't know. But given how close the first game was, that's not really a valid excuse, all things considered.
Yeah, and I mean, I'll save the joke for later of what I said at the game, but yeah, this game had some memories of a certain movie that I saw I saw early on in my childhood, and I'm just like, yep, that's what it feels like.
Hmm.
But we'll talk about that part a little bit later. Third quarter, I mean, we go into halftime down 13-5. I sat there and looked at the team and looked at the score, and I was just like, well, I mean, it could be worse, but at the
Yeah.
same time, I mean, it was pretty bad. You would hope that they could keep it close, especially in that first half. But man, their offense was clicking against our defense. Now the third quarter, though, again, I think it just goes into good halftime adjustments. For the third quarter, I mean, honestly, was probably our best quarter out of the entire game. Uh, you know,
Easily.
overall, I mean, yeah, when you look at the entire box score, especially, I mean, we did pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, if you took only the third quarter, we would have won. So,
Right.
but
But no, I mean there was right off the bat there was some penalties, but Will Malcolm kind of got his stuff together and you know pretty much unheard of most of the night, but he got a goal. They were able to we were able to kind of have a little bit better defense. I mean honestly, again we kept him to one goal in the third quarter, and it almost felt like okay we're down but not out of it.
yeah, I'd say the only thing that really hurt us was we had a series of penalties in a row, and it even led to we had so many guys in the sin bin that they actually awarded San Diego a penalty shot, and they got the great Dane Dobie to take it. Thankfully, Damu guarded it and timed it very well, and got a little help from the cross pipe as well. But yeah, it's I think without those penalties, we put ourselves in a much better position to score a few more than we did.
Yeah, and it's good. It was important for certain players to get more involved. Will Malcolm was one of them. Crawford has been held to nothing. It felt like all night. He wasn't making much of a difference, but then Dodds came in. He got a good shot, which I thought was a really good shot from him to begin with. But um, yeah, we get a few goals. We get back up to seven. They get one goal, get up to 14. I don't know. It felt like again, it felt like it was a really good quarter, but it could have been better.
Yeah. Well, if nothing else, we went to the fourth with kind of that dump and dumper mentality. Like, so you're telling me there's a chance?
There's a small chance, and yeah, I mean, fourth quarter started, and by that point, think you just mentioned it too. In the third quarter, they had subbed back in
Yes.
Damu, and just because Cam was doing good, but I feel like they were trying to see if they could just kind of sway things defensively back in their favor a little bit more. But the fourth quarter starts, and like Medeiros. I mean, you talked about him earlier. He's had a rough night and had some rough shots, but I mean, he gets a good goal right off the not right off the bat, but a few minutes in.
Yeah, I think the when the San Diego player was kind of trying to cut in the middle to score, we honestly kind of did what San Diego had been doing all night on their defensive end, where we crowded the guy, didn't make it easy, and applied enough pressure for him to lose possession. And from there, Josh Medeiros was able to run all the way down for an unassisted goal. So it was nice to see it got us back into it. And then soon after that, we had a similar goal off of a missed shot by San Diego.
Oh yeah, and that was uh I will say this: there was a highlight in the fourth quarter that I'll admit was probably the highlight of the night. Yeah, Damoud outlets. He goes after Brooker Moore, and the guy looks like a boulder running down the field anyway.
Yeah.
So, he and then yeah, he goes and right as he gets close to the goal, he like dives and shoots as he's diving at the goalie, which I'm sure the goalie was like having flashes of his life go before his eyes.
Yeah, it was a really fun one to see. And it's funny, upon replay, you're like, oh, did he dive or did the defender or did he trip or something? But whatever, it went in.
Yeah,
So a point is a point. So yeah, that was a definite highlight. And congrats to Brooker for scoring his first NLL goal.
yeah, his first NLL goal. That was pretty. Which I had thought he had one before, but obviously not. But yeah, it's it was definitely a highlight in a sea of low lights for the night, to see that happen. But of course, after that, San Diego kept the pressure on, gets a few more goals. I mean, honestly, there's really not a whole lot to touch on overall in this game, but other than it was just kind of not our night. But I think for the most part, San Diego showed why they're first in the West right now.
Yeah, and we definitely it might have just not been our night, but I think it shows that we do have uh, a ways to go to be considered part of the NLL elite
Mhm.
with those San Diegos and the Buffaloes of the world.
Right. And well, and even the NLL rankings came out earlier today, and they still had us ranked at number 5, which I think is a good thing, but at the same time I think they're considering, hey, there's really not a whole lot of teams that are above us right now. And we lost against possibly the best team in the league.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah. Record wise, I think all of the all the teams that are above us record wise, save for maybe Rochester, who lost. They lost to was it Vegas? I don't quite
yeah.
remember,
Yeah.
but yeah. So it's like okay, that's a nice that was pretty thoughtful of them to keep us in the same spot, considering the shellacking we took this past weekend.
Yeah. Well, and like you said, this was supposed to be kind of a measuring stick, a measuring game for us to see kind of where we are. And yes, it definitely wasn't our night. I hope the team can just look at it and say, you know what, that's not how we should play, and that's not how we should play going forward. And we talk about turning points all the time. This needs to be one. This needs to be a game where they can just put it in the past, forget about it, move on, and keep the eyes on the playoffs.
Absolutely. And we have some winnable games for the rest of the season and some others that are also going to be similar to this, what with 2 games against Calgary coming up. So it'll be important to kind of use the upcoming game that we'll talk about to kind of reestablish our identity, find our footing on both sides of the ball, and build momentum going into what will ideally be a playoff spot.
Yeah. So at this point, we really hope for some more wins. We can hopefully try to edge a little bit closer to that 2 spot, maybe get a home playoff game, but it looks like the 3rd spot is kind of where we're nesting right now. Well, I know this whole night, unfortunately, didn't have a whole lot of highlights, but there was definitely some stats to look at. Of course, it's that moment we're talking about, Mr. Andrew's stats of the game. Mr. Andrew, what kind of stats do you have for us?
Well, speaking of stats, Mr. Stotts killed us. That's one thing. That's one thing I noticed. Even after him and the general Patton got into their fisticuffs, he responded in a big way. He had 2 goals up to that point, and I think he finished with 4 plus a handful of assists. So, hey, hats off to him. He didn't let whatever shiner Patton gave him affect it for the rest of the games. And so you see why San Diego is such a powerful team, because they've got Dixon, Stotts, Doby, Berg, and then a slew of other guys beyond those 4 scored. So yeah, it definitely showed why their offense is so feared and why they're so hard to stop. As far as some of our stats go, We caused 4 turnovers on the night, which it's a bit low on the low side. And you think, okay, we'll just take care of the ball on the other side, and that might be okay. However, that did not happen. San Diego actually had 18 caused turnovers. And when you look at the actual turnovers on the game, we had 23 total. San Diego only had 10. So that led to so many more scoring opportunities for them. By the time the game ended, they had shot 17 more shots on goal than us, 62 to 45. And they beat us in the loose ball battle, 76 to 69. Those are pretty high numbers for loose ball stats. So it kind of shows the amount of possession changes that were going on. So this season, San Diego's kind of been switching off between Frank Sciliano and Chris Origlieri in the goal. This past game, they had Origlieri, and he basically did for San Diego what Nick Damude's been doing for us most of the season. He saved 36 out of 45 shots for an 80% save percentage. Damude and Cam McLeod were unfortunately sub 80% at 75% and 65% respectively. So it was just a tough night, and I think the defense didn't really do them any favors in terms of challenging San Diego's offense the way their defense was challenging Panther City's offense. So it was just a down night from the defense overall. And we alluded to this before, but Panther City actually won a majority of their face-offs in this game. But winning those face-offs doesn't really mean a whole lot if the opposing team can just force turnovers or bad shots immediately after, which seemed to happen just throughout the game. Either they would sandwich the one guy who the outlet was thrown to before the teammates could come on the screen, or they were forcing Panther City into bad rushed shots that weren't too close to the goal.
You know, it's funny that again, we talk about how just crazy good their defense played against us. It's funny, though, that you brought up about the goalies, because, we had mentioned that this was the doubleheader weekend for San Diego, and Origlieri got Friday night. Saturday night was the other goalie. And, it was very interesting to see that difference, because, I think we both watched Saturday night's game, San Diego against Buffalo, and that was some high quality, just crazy lacrosse going on that night.
Yeah, Origlieri against us, he saved 80%, and we obviously only scored 9 points. Sciliani, even though they lost, he had an even better night as a goalie the next night. Buffalo has Matt Vinch in the net as well, and he's a great goalie too. That was probably the only reason they lost.
And it's crazy to think that, again, that's why they're first in the division. When you have a situation like that where your offense is just like so powerful and can score at any moment, and then now you have this defense that you can just stifle teams and just close up the shooting lanes, and now you have 2 goalies that you can rely on. That kind of sets you up for where they are, which is first place, and honestly seeing a pretty clear road to the finals. But, well, of course, that is our stats of the game, which brings us, of course, to our Cool Cat play of the game. For me, there can be only one, and it's not Cam McLeod. There it is, Brooker Moore. He was the highlight in a game where I just felt so bad for the team. I felt so bad for the fans, but his goal. Just watching, like I said, it looks like he's built like a boulder, and he's just running down and running down. I'm like, is he even going to keep ahead of the defender? And he kept ahead of him just enough so he could score at the last second. It got everybody riled up, and that was good. So that is, of course, my play of the game. What about for yourself?
Yeah, it was a great momentum shift for the beginning of the fourth as well. And like you said, he's just this big, broad-shouldered dude just rambling on down the field and then getting a goal out of it. So it was nice to see. Mine is probably a goal that Phil Caputo had in the second quarter, where he faked running to further up the left side of the field and was able to juke the defender enough to where he did it wasn't even that fast, but he did a spin move sort of off of him as the defender was still recovering. And from there, he was able to net a pretty nice goal on Uriglieri. And he was, from what I remember, he was the leading goal scorer for us of the night with 2.
Yeah.
So, yeah, one of the few bright spots.
Yeah, again, you kind of have to pick and choose, uh, what bright spots you can highlight in a game like this. But, well, of course, that's our cool cat play of the game. Which brings us, of course, to our big cat players of the game. This was a tough one for me. I'm gonna let you go first because this was a very tough decision for me.
Oh, this is half joking, but my honorable mention was Liam Patton because I felt like he provided one of the only highlights of the game and one of the few, I guess. I don't even know if you'd call it a moral victory because violence isn't the answer, kids.
Right.
and it ultimately probably helps thoughts going even more. But it was one thing. I was there with a buddy who had never been to an NLL game before, and so when that happened, that definitely riled him up. That riled the crowd up. It didn't lead to quite the outcome we wanted, but I thought I'd give Liam Patton a shout out for that, and not just for fighting per se, but for having his teammates back when he saw Stotts take that cheap shot on Josh. My actual player of the game, I gotta stick with Phil Caputo. In a game without many bright spots, Caputo played his usual solid game. He generated some off-ball righty offense on his side, ended up with 3 points, basically 2 goals and 1 assist, and he didn't turn the ball over, which is pretty dang impressive considering the defense San Diego was playing.
Oh yeah, for sure. And again, you kind of have to pick and choose. Who had a good night out of this whole game of what you can consider is a bad night for Panther City. For me, I mean, I don't really have one because in my mind there's not one to highlight. I'll just say, the offense in general, I'd say the Malcolm brothers probably would be my players of the game. They didn't really have the high goals and the high scores and stuff like that, but Tony did a lot to try to help out the offense when he could and try to help, when he was out there. Will just never quite, hit what he was aiming for the night, but I mean, he got in some good goals, so that's what I mean. It's a tough decision for me because there really wasn't a player that I can just be like, yes, this is the one that did the best job in a game like this. But I would say the Malcolm brothers, both of them, tried their best, at least when they were out there.
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment, and also it is nice to see Tony get some shine every now and then because he now and then he gets overshadowed by Medeiros a little bit just because Medeiros is the one who's normally scoring in transition, but there's so much Tony brings to the table as well, not just on defense and with scoring every now and then, but as a playmaker.
Yeah. So, I mean, that is, of course, our big cat players of the game. This is definitely a game that I'm going to try my best to forget, but what are our final thoughts on this game? What about for you?
Well, we do have a ways to go to get where we want to go, but I think we got to look at it the same way that we've been talking about the Desert Dogs this season, where it's like, hey, they were where we were last year. We know how it feels to be the expansion team. San Diego is not too much older than us. I think this is their 3rd season, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, hey, yeah, right now there's a gap, but who's not to say that we can't close that gap in a very short amount of time. So we have that to look forward to, not just next season, but for the rest of the games this year. I do think it's funny. We kept talking about what we thought San Diego would think about in terms of which game of the week that they place more importance of, because I imagine we both imagine that Buffalo would have gotten them more hyped facing the other division leader. But I think Panther City, maybe that there was a mental lapse of some sort in that they were maybe thinking too much about the end goal of beating the best team in the division versus playing the game that we're accustomed to playing. Again, that's not taking away from what San Diego was able to do in terms of disrupting us on offense and defense. but I think that played a bit into it.
Yeah, and it definitely just kind of, I hate to say that it was a humbling experience, but it was. I
Hmm.
mean, we were riding high on the last few wins. I mean, obviously we had the Texas Forever Night a few games ago. People were excited about that, and we were feeling good about ourselves. And this is the kind of game that just kind of sits you back down and says, "Hey, I understand that you're doing good and things are clicking and your offense is doing really good, especially with Crawford and all that, but you still got a long ways to go." And what I was talking about earlier is reference to a movie that I watched when I was younger. I told you at one point this almost felt like the Mighty Ducks 2 when they're
Yes.
when they're going against Iceland, and not the very end, game against Iceland. I'm talking about the first game where they like are getting pretty much shut out. And I think it's Fogelman comes to the bench and he's like, "They're bigger than us, they're stronger than us, they have more facial hair than us." And it's true. It felt like we were never in the game to begin with. We were there for a second at the beginning, but once things started going and once they started, doing what they do on offense, it's almost like we just kind of lost track. Like you said, we lost track of where we were supposed to be in the game we were supposed to be playing. And so I hope that's something we can go into the next game and kind of fix, and kind of work on a little bit more. And really, I think Coach TK is going to sit down the team and pretty much be like, "Hey, look, it is one game at a time. I understand that we're in third place. I understand that the playoffs are in sight, and all we have to do is pretty much, do what we're supposed to make the playoffs. But this is still a one game at a time kind of season. We can't look ahead to there and not focus on what we're doing right now in front of us."
Right, absolutely. Kind of speaking to that Mighty Ducks to reference. Well, first off, shout out to Nathan Grennan for making his return.
Yeah, hey, we forgot
Yeah,
to mention.
yeah.
Yeah, it was his first game back.
It was nice to see him. He probably he probably was a little rusty and also was just affected by just like the rest of the team was by San Diego's physicality. I do know there was one specific play. I don't remember if it was a defender or it was Austin Stotts, but Grennan was running towards the guy and looked like he had intentions to like truck him or at least kind of give him a pretty tough shot. But Stotts or whoever was just kind of lowered their shoulder as Grennan was making contact, and the San Diego player was unaffected and Grennan just fell right on his back. I was like, oh gosh, this is the story of the night. And along those same lines, I do think the physicality of the game is somewhere where we really missed having Liam Burns on defense,
Hmm.
because that's something. Obviously, we it's a next man up mentality and everything, but something about the chemistry and having to replace someone that played such a key part of what we do on that side of the ball was really big. Hopefully they were able to sort it out by the time we get to Albany.
Right, and I think even during the game, I mean, I'll give a shout out to Drew Betteridge. I mean, he kind of messaged us during the middle of the game, and he was like, "Yeah, we're kind of missing Liam right now," and pretty much, kind of took a slight jab that that second round pick isn't playing very well right now. And I'm like, I get that, but you know, the team has to adjust. I mean, Liam Burns isn't there. He is traded away. You have to fill that spot, and you have to figure out how to adjust and play your game when you're missing people like that. Again, as we talked about last week, good luck to Liam Burns out there in Philadelphia. But yeah, you could definitely tell that he was missed during this game. But that happens all the time in sports. You have to figure out how to move on.
Mm-hmm. Well, if there is any silver lining, maybe not even necessarily pertaining to this game itself. Um, Saskatchewan and Colorado still lost.
Yeah.
So it's like, well, we didn't gain any ground on San Diego or Calgary agree. I guess you could say San Diego was a wash since they also lost to Buffalo, but it would have been nice to kind of gain some ground on the Roughnecks ahead of our upcoming not one but two matchups with them to end the season.
For sure. Speaking about San Diego's doubleheader, real quick, talking back about the NLL's power rankings that came out today, they still had San Diego first and Buffalo second. Quick thoughts on that?
I They were probably penalized less for that overtime loss at home to Buffalo than they were rewarded for the win against up and coming Panther City.
Yeah, I,
Yeah,
I
that's the way I'm looking at it.
I mean, I think a lot of people thought that Buffalo should have been number one because of the win against San Diego. I even think that Buffalo probably should be number one, but there's other things you have to take into consideration. It was their second game in a doubleheader,
Yes.
and it was against a division leading, a team that was in the finals last year, and division leading Buffalo, who put up a really good fight against them, and they had to take him to overtime. So yeah, looking at the whole picture, I can see why San Diego could be number one still. It was just kind of irritating. They literally went against each other and still got number one.
Yeah. It's Hey, it was Godzilla night. What can you say?
Right, right. But well, we leave this game far, far out of our minds, and we move on from that. Looking forward to another home game. Again, I'm glad we're getting some home games in the last few months. But our next home game is actually going to be this weekend, this Saturday against Albany, the same Albany Firewolves where Jake Fox ended up on. So this will be his quote unquote return to Panther City, I
Yeah,
guess.
is a revenge game, like if you could call it that.
Well, and Albany in itself hasn't really had a great year. They've, I think they're kind of still towards the lower end of the standings. Not really, not really Georgia Swarm low, but still has had some really close games this year. Had
Hey,
some really good highlights.
you
Uh,
know what?
uh,
I'm actually looking at the standings. The Swarm have gone on like a 4 game win streak and are actually above the Firewolves now.
Oh no! I thought they were above the far or above Georgia at least. Well, okay. Well, in this case, I think this is a great time for Albany to be coming into town. They're obviously not the best team in the league right now, and so and we need a game to kind of get corrected. The problem is, I really we've talked about before. I hope Panther City doesn't play down to them, and I hope they take this opportunity to say we need to be better and we need to play at that standard that's high enough to even fight against teams like San Diego or teams like even if we were to go against like a team like Buffalo or Colorado even right now we need to have that momentum and that confidence build back up in our team, and I think that's why Albany coming into town is probably a good call right now.
hmm You alluded the Jake Fox trade where we sent him to Albany. They have actually been improving since then. It hasn't resulted in wins, but they've lost their last 2 games by combined 5 goals, and that includes losing by just 2 goals to the Toronto Rock. So they're definitely doing better than they were in terms of effort and execution wise. That said, I took a look at the statistical leaders in the league this season, and they're really indicative of Albany not really having an identity. Because I was looking at the top 20 among goals, points, assists.
Mm-hmm.
There was virtually no Albany player on the leaderboards. I think they had the 19th top assist man, but you can tell they're still having problems on both offense and defense. Just using that as an indicator.
Yeah, and so with them coming into town, this really needs to be a game where Panther City can kind of get back on track, build that confidence up, and really play well on both sides. Looking at the game, I guess my idea or my thought is I think we need to just be better not only on defense this game, just to again build confidence, but we need to find our stride in offense again. I really hope that Will Malcolm and Donville and Crawford can kind of all get, and even Dodds can kind of all get back into their ways of finding ways to score. So I think I hope this is a game kind of like a reverse game against San Diego where we kind of, for lack of better words, blow them out. But it's hard to tell right now.
Yeah, I think that's something that we could definitely use. Albany, not that this is like a developmental season for them or anything like that, but we have playoff aspirations and home field aspirations. Albany, even if they do win out the rest of the year, they're probably not quite there. So even if they do play hard and whatnot, I would still give us the upper hand in terms of the makeup of our team, what we know we're capable of based on how we've played when we've been at our best. So yeah, we need to get the taste out of our mouths from that beating from San
Yeah.
Diego.
And so I feel like with that combined with them coming into town and being a home game and them wanting to really kind of show, even the fans in Fort Worth, like, hey, don't let that game get us down. My prediction, I mean, for this game, a Panther City win against Albany. I'm really hoping for a lot of offense from us. So I'm gonna say Daymood has another good night and really just shuts them down again to prove a point. I'm gonna say 15-8. We win 15-8. What about for yourself?
That was very close to what I was going to say. I was going to say 14-8.
Hey, there you go.
And you know what? I as long as we win, Jake Fox can have the best game of his career.
Right. Well, again, I talked about this before. I really feel bad for the guy because he came in and then before he could even get started with Panther City, he was kind of overshadowed, and then the next thing you know, he's off the team.
Yeah, and then the first game he had with Albany after we traded him, he was a nominee for Play of the Week
Yeah,
with I think he had like a dunk or a no look
yeah.
shot.
And so he obviously can make a difference in an offense, and it kind of sucks that we didn't get to see that. But yeah, who knows? This might be the Jake Fox revenge game where he gets 6 goals, but it's 6 goals by himself, and we win like 14-6. So you never know.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, of course, we look forward to this weekend's game against Albany. Just a reminder, it is Lacrosse Out Cancer Night. So be sure to come out and support Panther City as they do that about cancer awareness. But yeah, any final thoughts before we go into this next home game?
One other shout out about this upcoming game. The team did recently sign Johnny Hodges to an NIL deal. So for those of you who don't know Johnny Hodges, he was a former collegiate lacrosse player at Navy and played with them for a bit and eventually decided when he was growing up, he played lacrosse and football and one other sport, I believe. But while he was playing lacrosse over there, he said, "You know what? I love football. I kind of miss playing that, and
Mm-hmm.
I like the state of Texas. There, I'd like to come on down to Fort Worth." So he ended up transferring to TCU and has become one of the team's best defenders. I believe he plays linebacker, and so the team is hoping to use him for promotions, get the word out about Panther City and whatnot. And so I don't know that he's going to actually plan any games for us. I don't believe that's the sort of deal that he's on, but he is going to do what he can to get the word out. And being one of the Horned Frogs football team's most popular players, hopefully he can do that.
Yeah, and yeah, I think you said it right. I don't think he's gonna play or anything like that. That'd be an interesting promotion there. Just get him to play for the team. But no, I think he's there to kind of bring awareness to the area a little bit more. It does seem like whenever we have colleges, even this last game, there was a whole group of people from college. You said they were on spring break or something.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, there were quite a few.
Yeah, but they had a whole group and they were just like cheering away. So that was, again, when stuff like that happens, it's really nice just to kind of have that commotion and that camaraderie
Mm-hmm.
at the Panther City games, and we hope to see more of that in the future. Well, of course, we look to get back on track this weekend against Albany. Hopefully, get a win and keep that third spot in the West as we try to aim for that playoff spot this coming weekend. Of course, we thank you everybody for listening. This is the Cowtown Cats Lacrosse podcast. I am once again Nicholas.
And I'm once again Andy.
And we'll talk to you guys later. Have a good night.
Cheers, y'all.